At 9:47 a.m. on October 12, 1944, Private First Class Daniel Morrison lay flat in a muddy ravine near Aachen, Germany, listening to the breathing of 79 other American soldiers who hadn't moved in 3 days. They were trapped, pinned down by a German sniper none of them had seen. A sniper who hadn't missed a shot in 72 hours. Morrison was 22 years old, from Oregon, a replacement who joined the 1st Infantry Division 6 weeks earlier. He'd never been this scared. Never been this helpless. The ravine was maybe 40 yards wide and 200 yards long, carved into the earth by centuries of water flow. Steep banks on both sides, 15 feet high, too steep to climb quickly. One end of the ravine opened toward American lines 400 yards back. The other end faced German positions in the ruins of what had been a small village, dominated by a damaged church with a partially collapsed bell tower. The battalion, or what was left of it, had advanced into the ravine on October 9th, using it for cover while moving toward the village. The plan was to clear the church and surrounding buildings, secure the high ground, then push east toward the Siegfried Line. But the plan had died the moment the first man tried to climb out of the ravine on the village side. Lieutenant James Bradley had been leading. He'd gotten halfway up the bank when a single shot cracked across the morning air. Bradley fell backward into the ravine, dead before he hit the ground. 7.92 millimeters Mauser round through the head. One shot, one kill. The second man who tried was Sergeant Eddie Walsh, 20 minutes later. Walsh thought he'd be faster, thought he could scramble up the bank and into cover before the sniper could aim. Walsh made it 3 feet up the slope. Same result. Single shot to the head. Dead instantly. The third attempt was by Corporal James Chun 2 hours after that. Chun tried crawling up the bank slowly, staying low, minimizing his profile. He got 6 feet up. The sniper waited until Chun thought he might make it, then fired. Chun survived, barely, the round passing through his shoulder instead of his head. But he couldn't climb, couldn't move, and dragging him back down the bank had exposed 2 more soldiers. One took a round through the arm. The other was killed. After Chun, nobody else tried. The German sniper owned the village side bank of the ravine. Anyone who showed themselves above ground level died. The sniper's position was somewhere in the church ruins 300 yards away. The church had been hit by artillery weeks earlier. The roof was partially collapsed, the bell tower was damaged, and the walls were pockmarked with shell impacts. But enough structure remained to provide hundreds of potential hiding spots. Windows, damaged walls, the bell tower, the rubble piles around the foundation. The sniper could be anywhere. American doctrine for dealing with snipers was straightforward. Locate the position, suppress with direct fire, eliminate with artillery or mortars. But Morrison's battalion couldn't locate the position. The sniper never revealed himself, never fired more than 1 shot at a time, which meant no sustained muzzle flash for observers to spot. The shots came at irregular intervals, sometimes minutes apart, sometimes hours. The sniper was patient, disciplined, waiting for Americans to make mistakes. Calling artillery on the entire church was the obvious solution, but the battalion's radio had been damaged during the initial advance. The radio man, Corporal Martinez, had been trying to repair it for 2 days with no success. Without radio contact, they couldn't request fire support. Without fire support, they couldn't suppress the sniper. Without suppressing the sniper, they couldn't escape the ravine. They were trapped by 1 German with 1 rifle. By October 11th, the situation was desperate. 80 men stuck in a ravine with limited ammunition, limited water, and no food. The wounded needed evacuation. Chen's shoulder wound was infected. 2 other men had been injured in the initial advance and were getting worse. The weather was cold and wet. Men were starting to show signs of exposure and exhaustion. Command knew they were trapped. American forces controlled the area behind the ravine. But without radio contact, Command didn't know the specific situation, didn't know about the sniper, didn't know why the battalion hadn't completed their objective. Morrison spent October 11th thinking about the sniper problem. He wasn't an officer, wasn't a leader, just a private who'd been assigned to a rifle company and told to follow orders. But 3 days of being pinned down had given him time to think. The sniper had to be in the church. The angle of shots, the distance, the clear line of sight to the ravine, all pointed to the church as the only viable position. But the church had too many possible shooting locations. Without knowing the exact window or opening the sniper was using, they couldn't return effective fire. What they needed was a way to observe the church without exposing themselves. Binoculars weren't enough. Officers had been watching the church for 2 days and seen nothing. The sniper was too well concealed. They needed to force the sniper to reveal himself. Make him shoot at something, anything, so observers could see the muzzle flash and identify his location. But nobody was willing to volunteer as bait. Chun had tried being careful and gotten shot. Walsh had tried being fast and gotten killed. Bradley had tried being first and died. What other option was there? On the afternoon of October 11th, Morrison was resting near a destroyed American supply truck that had been abandoned in the ravine weeks earlier, probably during a previous unit's retreat. The truck was on its side, burned out, stripped of anything useful. Morrison was using it as a windbreak, trying to stay warm. He noticed something glinting in the truck's wreckage. A piece of mirror, maybe 4 inches by 6 inches, broken from what had probably been the truck's side mirror. The shard was relatively intact. One corner cracked off, but the rest still reflective. Morrison picked up the mirror shard without thinking. Just something to look at. He could see his reflection. Dirty face, 3 days without shaving, exhausted eyes. He turned the mirror, catching sunlight, watching the reflection move. A bright spot of light danced across the ravine wall as he moved the mirror. Morrison watched the light, mesmerized for a moment by the simple physics of reflection. Then he had an idea. What if he could use the mirror to see over the bank without exposing himself? Like a periscope. Hold the mirror above his head, angle it to show what was on the other side of the bank. He could observe the church, watch for the sniper, without putting his head above the ridgeline. It was a simple concept. Maybe too simple, but it might work. Morrison found a piece of wire in the truck wreckage, thin steel wire that had probably been part of the truck's cargo tie-downs. He wrapped the wire around the mirror shard, creating a handle, then attached the mirror to his M1 Garand rifle by tying the wire to the barrel. The attachment was crude, the mirror wobbling slightly, but it held. Morrison could hold the rifle up, barrel pointed skyward, and the mirror would be 8 feet above ground level, high enough to see over the bank. Morrison tested the concept from the bottom of the ravine. He held the rifle up, angled it, tried to see if the mirror showed him anything useful. From his low position, he couldn't see much, just sky and the top of the far bank. But the principle worked. If he moved closer to the bank, maybe climbed partway up, he could use the mirror to observe the church without exposing his head. At 4:23 p.m., with light starting to fade, Morrison decided to try it. He didn't tell anyone what he was doing. Didn't want to explain. Didn't want officers telling him not to. He just crawled toward the village side bank, staying low, dragging his rifle with the mirror attached. He stopped 10 feet from the bank, found a slight depression in the ground that provided some cover. From there, he slowly raised his rifle, keeping his own body flat against the ground, letting the mirror rise above the bank's edge. Through the mirror's reflection, Morrison could see the church. The view was inverted and distorted, but visible. He could see the bell tower, the damaged roof, the rubble-filled windows. He moved the rifle slightly, scanning, trying to see details. The mirror caught sunlight, reflecting it in various directions as Morrison adjusted the angle. Morrison was focused on trying to see the sniper, trying to spot any movement or shape that might indicate a hiding place. He wasn't thinking about the reflection bouncing off the mirror. Wasn't thinking about where the reflected sunlight was going. But 300 yards away, in a third-floor opening of the damaged bell tower, Oberstfreiter Klaus Werner saw a bright flash. Werner was 31 years old, a veteran sniper who'd fought on the Eastern Front for 2 years before being transferred to the West. He'd been in the bell tower for 4 days, assigned to hold this position and prevent American advances. Werner had killed 6 Americans in 3 days, had wounded 3 others. He was patient, careful, never exposing himself unnecessarily. Werner looked through his scope, a Zeiss ZF-42 mounted on his Kar 98K rifle, searching for the source of the flash. He saw it again, a bright glint near the top of the ravine bank, approximately where he'd shot the American sergeant 2 days earlier. Werner had been trained to recognize scope glint. Enemy snipers, using telescopic sights, would sometimes reveal themselves through sunlight reflecting off their lenses. Werner had killed 2 Soviet snipers on the Eastern Front who'd made that mistake. The flash Werner was seeing looked like scope glint. Brief, bright, moving slightly. Someone was observing from the ravine, probably another American sniper setting up to counter him. Werner had been expecting this. The Americans wouldn't leave him unopposed forever. They'd send counter-snipers eventually. This flash was probably one of them. Werner settled his crosshairs on the source of the flash. The position was partially concealed, difficult shot, but Werner was confident. He controlled his breathing, calculated the distance, adjusted for wind. The flash appeared again as the target moved. Werner fired. The Mauser cracked. 300 yards away, Morrison felt his rifle jump violently as the German's bullet struck it. The round hit the mirror, shattering it completely, fragments of glass exploding. The impact tore the rifle from Morrison's hands. Morrison flattened himself against the ground, heart pounding, convinced he was about to be shot again. But no second shot came. Morrison lay still for 30 seconds, not moving, barely breathing. Finally, he crawled backward, away from the bank, back toward the center of the ravine. His hands were shaking. His rifle was damaged, the barrel dented where the bullet had struck, the mirror destroyed. He'd nearly died. The sniper had seen the reflection and shot at it. But someone else had seen something too. Captain Frank Morrison, no relation to Daniel Morrison, had been watching the church through binoculars for 6 hours. Captain Morrison commanded what was left of Baker Company. Roughly 40 men trapped in the ravine. He'd been trying to spot the German sniper since October 9th, watching every window, every opening, every possible position. He'd seen nothing. German snipers were too disciplined to reveal themselves. But when Private Morrison had held up the mirror, Captain Morrison had been watching the church's bell tower. He'd seen the muzzle flash. Just a brief flicker, barely visible in the afternoon light, but unmistakable. 3rd floor of the bell tower, north-facing opening, approximately center of the structure. Captain Morrison called for his remaining NCO, Sergeant William Hayes. Hayes crawled over. Captain Morrison told him, "The sniper's in the bell tower. 3rd floor, north side. I just saw his muzzle flash." Hayes asked how he'd seen it when nobody had seen it before. Captain Morrison said, "One of the privates held up something reflective. The German shot at it. I saw the flash." The battalion had one M2 60mm mortar, operated by Corporal Eddie Rodriguez and Private Sam Chun. The mortar had limited ammunition, maybe 20 rounds remaining. They'd been saving it for emergencies. This qualified. Captain Morrison told Rodriguez to set up the mortar, target the church bell tower, prepare for fire mission. Rodriguez and Chun positioned the mortar at the bottom of the ravine, calculated the range to the church, set the elevation. Captain Morrison wanted 2 rounds on target. 1st round to adjust, 2nd round to hit. Rodriguez loaded the 1st round, checked his calculations one more time, dropped the round. The mortar thumped. 4 seconds later, the round impacted 20 yards short of the bell tower, exploding in the rubble at the church's base. Rodriguez adjusted elevation, loaded the 2nd round, dropped it. Another thump. This time, the round hit the bell tower directly. The explosion blasted through the 3rd floor opening where Werner had been positioned. Stone and debris collapsed. The structure, already damaged, couldn't withstand the direct hit. Part of the 3rd floor caved in. Werner didn't survive. The explosion killed him instantly, his body buried in rubble. The bell tower was silent. No more shots. Captain Morrison waited 5 minutes, watching through binoculars. Nothing moved in the tower. No muzzle flash, no sign of the sniper. He ordered Hayes to send 2 scouts up the bank. If the sniper was still active, he'd shoot. The scouts climbed slowly, rifles ready. No shots. They reached the top, gave the all-clear signal. The sniper was gone. The battalion climbed out of the ravine at 5:02 p.m. on October 12th. 80 men who'd been trapped for 3 days, finally able to move. They advanced carefully toward the village, rifles ready, expecting resistance. But the village was abandoned. The Germans had withdrawn, leaving only Werner to delay the American advance. Baker Company secured the church. By 5:30 p.m. soldiers searched the bell tower ruins, found Werner's body, recovered his rifle and equipment. The Kar 98K, with its Zeiscope, was sent back to intelligence for analysis. Werner's personal effects were collected. Letters from home, a Wehrmacht identification booklet, a photograph of a woman and 2 children. Standard procedure. Captain Morrison asked who'd been holding the reflective object that drew the sniper's fire. Hayes found Private Morrison and brought him to the captain. Private Morrison explained about the mirror shard from a truck, attaching it to his rifle, using it to try to see the church. He said he hadn't meant to make the sniper shoot. He just wanted to observe without getting killed like the others. Captain Morrison looked at the damaged rifle, at the shattered remains of the mirror still wired to the barrel. The captain said, "Your mirror saved this battalion." The reflection made the German fire, and his muzzle flash gave away his position. If he hadn't shot, we'd still be in that ravine. Private Morrison didn't feel like he'd done anything heroic. He'd been trying to survive. The mirror idea had been improvisation, something to try because nothing else was working. The sniper shooting at the reflection had been unexpected. Private Morrison had thought the mirror would help him observe, not draw fire. The fact that drawing fire had solved the problem was accidental. But Captain Morrison saw it differently. Accident or not, the mirror had ended a 3-day stalemate, had saved 80 men from remaining trapped, had eliminated a sniper who'd killed 6 Americans and wounded 4 others. Results mattered more than intentions. Word spread through the company by evening. The private with the mirror had somehow gotten the German sniper to reveal his position. The details varied as the story was retold. Some versions said the private had deliberately flashed the mirror to provoke the sniper. Other versions said he'd been using the mirror as a signal. A few versions claimed he'd used the mirror to blind the sniper. But soldiers who'd actually witnessed it, including Captain Morrison, knew the truth. The mirror had been an improvised periscope, and the reflection drawing fire had been unintended. The sniper had shot at what he thought was an enemy scope glint. His shot had revealed his position. American mortars had done the rest. The mirror technique wasn't new. Soldiers had been using mirrors, polished metal, and other reflective objects for observation since at least World War I. Trench periscopes had been standard equipment, allowing soldiers to observe enemy trenches without exposing their heads. But improvised mirrors for field use were less common. Most soldiers didn't carry mirrors, except small shaving mirrors in personal kits. Using a broken mirror shard as an observation device was resourceful, but not revolutionary. What made Private Morrison's experience significant wasn't the mirror itself, but the accidental consequence of using it. The reflected sunlight had given away his position, yes, but it had also provoked the German sniper to fire. And firing had revealed the sniper's position, something American forces had been trying to determine for 3 days. The accident had produced the desired result. Soldiers being pinned down by snipers was one of the most frustrating combat situations in World War II. A single skilled sniper could hold up an entire unit for hours or days, killing anyone who moved carelessly. Snipers were difficult to locate because they fired infrequently from concealed positions and relocated after shooting. Standard counter-sniper tactics involved careful observation, sometimes for hours, waiting for the enemy to make a mistake. The mirror incident at Aachen demonstrated an alternative. Force the sniper to shoot by presenting a tempting target, then use the muzzle flash to locate him. This wasn't a new concept. Helmet decoys, dummy soldiers, and other bait tactics were used throughout the war. But the mirror added an element the Germans hadn't expected. The reflection looked like enemy optics, specifically like a scope glint from another sniper. German snipers were trained to counter enemy snipers. When Werner saw what appeared to be scope glint, his training said shoot first, eliminate the threat. His response had been tactically correct by his doctrine, but it had exposed him to Captain Morrison's observation. The incident was documented in Baker Company's after-action report dated October 14, 1944. The report described the 3-day stalemate in the ravine, the German sniper in the church tower, and the resolution. Enemy sniper position identified when sniper fired at reflection from improvised mirror device. Mortar fire neutralized sniper. Battalion able to advance and secure objective. The report didn't include Private Morrison's name. After-action reports typically credited units, not individuals, unless recommending for awards. Private Morrison wasn't recommended for an award. His actions, while effective, hadn't been recognized as particularly heroic. He'd used a mirror to observe, accidentally drew fire, and the captain had used the resulting muzzle flash to locate the enemy. Chain of events, not heroism. But other soldiers in Baker Company remembered. The story circulated through the 1st Infantry Division over the following weeks. Some private used a mirror to make a German sniper shoot. Then they mortared him. 3-day stalemate ended in 5 minutes. Details got embellished with retelling, but the core story remained consistent. Mirror, reflection, sniper revealed, mortar fire, problem solved. Several other units tried similar tactics in subsequent weeks. Using mirrors or polished metal to observe enemy positions became more common. Some soldiers specifically used mirrors to try provoking enemy snipers to fire, though success was inconsistent. Most German snipers, after October 1944, had learned to be more cautious about shooting at suspicious reflections. The tactical lessons spread informally. Field manuals didn't change. Official doctrine didn't incorporate mirror tactics. But soldiers taught other soldiers. If you're pinned by a sniper you can't locate, try using a mirror. Wave it around, make reflections. The sniper might think it's another sniper and take a shot. When he shoots, watch for the muzzle flash. The technique wasn't reliable. Many German snipers didn't fall for it. But it worked often enough to be worth trying when conventional methods failed. Private Daniel Morrison continued serving with Baker Company through November 1944. He fought in the Hurtgen Forest, participated in defensive operations during the Battle of the Bulge, and advanced into Germany in early 1945. He survived the war and returned to Oregon in August 1945. He worked as a logger for 32 years, married in 1947, had 3 children. He rarely spoke about the mirror incident. When asked about significant combat experiences, he'd mention the Hurtgen Forest or the Bulge. The mirror in the ravine seemed too minor to mention. He hadn't done anything except try not to get killed. The sniper shooting at his mirror had been unexpected. The captain using that shot to locate the sniper had been smart tactical thinking, but Morrison hadn't planned any of it. He'd just been scared and trying to survive. In 1989, a military historian researching the 1st Infantry Division's operations around Aachen found Baker Company's after-action report from October 1944. The report mentioned the mirror incident briefly. The historian, intrigued by the unusual detail, tried to find veterans from Baker Company who remembered the event. He located 3, Private Morrison, Sergeant Hayes, and Corporal Rodriguez. All 3 confirmed the basic story. Rodriguez remembered firing the mortar rounds that killed the German sniper. Hayes remembered Captain Morrison spotting the muzzle flash. And Private Morrison remembered holding up the mirror and having the German shoot at it. The historian asked Private Morrison if he'd intended to draw the sniper's fire. Morrison said no. He'd been trying to observe the church without getting shot. The reflection had been unintentional. The historian asked if Morrison realized his action had saved the battalion. Morrison said he hadn't thought about it that way. The captain's observation and the mortar crew's accuracy had saved the battalion. Morrison had just been holding a mirror. The historian pressed, but without the mirror, the sniper wouldn't have fired, and his position wouldn't have been revealed. Morrison acknowledged that was true, but repeated that he hadn't planned it. He'd gotten lucky. The sniper had made a mistake, and the captain had capitalized on it. The historian estimated, based on the after-action report and veteran interviews, that approximately 80 American soldiers had been trapped in the ravine by the German sniper. If the sniper had remained undetected for another day or two, casualties from exposure, dehydration, and additional sniper fire might have been significant. The mirror incident, whether intentional or accidental, had ended the stalemate and allowed the battalion to complete its mission with no additional casualties. In that sense, the mirror had saved those 80 men from potential death or injury. The historian published his findings in 1992 in a journal article about improvised tactics in World War II. The article described several incidents where soldiers used unconventional methods to solve tactical problems, including Morrison's mirror at Aachen. The article reached a limited academic audience, mostly military historians and veterans. Morrison received 2 letters after the article published. One from a former German sniper who'd served in the Aachen area in 1944. The German veteran said he'd been trained to shoot at scope glints and reflections, as these often indicated enemy snipers. He said American forces had learned to exploit this by late 1944, using reflections to draw fire. He didn't recall the specific incident Morrison described, but confirmed it was plausible. The second letter was from a veteran of the 9th Infantry Division who'd been pinned down by a German sniper near Aachen around the same time. His unit had tried using a mirror to locate the sniper, based on rumors they'd heard. It hadn't worked in their case. The German hadn't taken the bait. But they'd heard it worked for another unit. Maybe that had been Morrison's unit. Captain Frank Morrison, who'd commanded Baker Company and spotted the sniper's muzzle flash, had died in 1978. He'd stayed in the Army after the war, served in Korea, retired as a lieutenant colonel in 1964. In his personal papers, donated to a military archive after his death, there was a brief mention of the ravine incident in a letter to his wife dated October 1944. We were pinned down for 3 days by one German sniper. Finally located him when he shot at a reflection from a mirror one of my men was using. 2 mortar rounds ended it. Sometimes the simplest things solve the biggest problems. Sergeant Hayes survived the war and returned to civilian life in 1946. He became a high school teacher in Pennsylvania, taught history for 35 years. In a 1987 interview for a local veterans oral history project, Hayes mentioned the mirror incident. We were stuck in a ravine, German sniper had us pinned. One of the privates rigged up a mirror to look over the edge without exposing himself. The sniper shot at the mirror, probably thought it was another sniper scope. Our captain saw where the shot came from and called mortar fire. Just like that, 3-day problem solved. Made me realize that sometimes solutions come from unexpected places. Corporal Rodriguez, who'd fired the mortar rounds that killed Werner, also survived. He stayed in the Army, served 20 years, retired in 1960. In a 1995 interview, Rodriguez said, "I fired a lot of mortar rounds during the war, but those 2 rounds at Aachen were probably the most important. One German sniper had trapped an entire battalion. 2 rounds, and he was done. The captain gave me the target based on seeing a muzzle flash when the German shot at some private's mirror. Best fire mission I ever had." Perfect example of how one shot at the right time can change everything. Klaus Werner, the German sniper killed in the bell tower, had been a veteran Eastern Front sniper with 87 confirmed kills, according to documents found on his body. Werner had been awarded the Iron Cross Second Class in 1942 and the Iron Cross First Class in 1943. He'd been transferred to the Western Front in August 1944, assigned to defensive operations around Aachen. German records indicate Werner's unit had been ordered to delay American advances for as long as possible using snipers and small delaying forces. Werner had performed his mission effectively for 4 days, killing or wounding 10 Americans before being killed by mortar fire on October 12th. German after-action reports noted Werner's death, but didn't include details about how his position had been located. The Germans didn't know about the mirror. The mirror shard that Private Morrison had used was never recovered. It had been shattered when Werner shot at it, fragments scattered in the ravine. Morrison's rifle had been damaged enough that he replaced it with a rifle taken from a casualty. The damaged weapon was sent back for repair or disposal. No physical evidence of the mirror remained except the wire Morrison had used to attach it, which he'd kept for a few days before discarding. The incident became one of thousands of small tactical innovations and accidents that characterized World War II combat. Soldiers improvising solutions to immediate problems, sometimes succeeding through skill and sometimes through luck. The mirror at Aachen was primarily luck. Morrison had wanted to observe safely, hadn't intended to draw fire, didn't expect the German to shoot, and certainly hadn't planned for the captain to be watching at the exact moment the German fired. But the chain of accidents produced a favorable result. That was often how combat worked. Not according to plan, not as anticipated, but somehow resolving through a combination of action, reaction, and chance. The broader lesson, if there was one, was that soldiers trapped in difficult situations needed to try something, even if that something was improvised, uncertain, and potentially dangerous. Morrison could have remained flat in the ravine, done nothing, hope someone else solved the problem. Instead, he tried using a mirror to observe. That attempt, though it failed as intended, produced an unintended consequence that solved the problem. Action, even imperfect action, was often better than inaction. Military training after World War II included scenarios where small units were pinned down by enemy fire and needed to improvise solutions. The Aachen mirror incident was sometimes used as an example. Soldier uses mirror for observation, accidentally draws fire. Fire reveals enemy position, problem solved. Instructors emphasized that improvisation often involved unexpected results, and that soldiers should remain alert for opportunities created by those results. If your mirror draws fire, use that fire to locate the enemy. If your decoy gets shot, observe where the shot came from. Turn accidents into advantages. Daniel Morrison died on March 3, 2006, at age 84. His obituary in the Oregonian newspaper mentioned his World War II service with the 1st Infantry Division, his participation in major campaigns, including Normandy, Hurtgen Forest, and the Battle of the Bulge. It noted he'd been awarded the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. It did not mention the mirror incident at Aachen. Morrison's family learned about it only after his death, when the historian who'd interviewed Morrison in 1989 sent condolences and explained that Morrison's improvisation with a mirror had been documented in military history journals as an example of effective field innovation. Morrison's children were surprised. Their father had never mentioned it. They found the story consistent with what they knew about him: practical, resourceful, uncomfortable with attention or praise. Today, the mirror incident appears in a few specialized military history books and articles about improvised tactics. It's not famous, not taught widely, not part of popular World War II narratives. But it's remembered by those interested in how small unit tactics actually worked, how soldiers solved unexpected problems, how accidents sometimes produced desirable results. The story illustrates that innovation in combat often came from desperate soldiers trying anything that might help, not from careful planning or official doctrine. There are countless untold and unrecognized stories from World War II. It's our responsibility to bring them to light. The mirror at Aachen is one of those stories. A frightened private, a broken mirror shard, an accidental reflection. A German sniper's tactical mistake, an observant captain, 2 mortar rounds. Chain of small events that freed 80 trapped soldiers and allowed an advance to continue. No dramatic heroics, no famous battle, just problem-solving under pressure with whatever tools were available. Private Morrison used a mirror because he didn't want to die looking over a bank at a hidden sniper. The mirror drew fire. The fire revealed the sniper. The sniper died. The battalion advanced. Simple sequence, profound result. That's how many problems were solved in World War II, not through grand strategy or technological superiority, but through soldiers improvising with broken truck mirrors and wire, trying to survive one more day. And now you know that story too.